in person, and all those of you who are watching us via the live stream. Thank you so much for joining us today and spending this, for those of you who are here in Davos, this very snowy afternoon here in Davos, spending your time with us. There's so many events that take place in Davos this week alone, and we are very grateful that you have chosen this one to be here with us. For those I haven't met yet here, my name is Aldijana Šišić. I am Chief of Multistakeholder Partnerships and Advisory Services in UN Women, and I'm delighted to be your EMC for the event. This is not my daily job, so you will forgive me for all of the mistakes that I make. I'm asking for forgiveness in advance. But before we begin, first, I would like to thank our partner, DP World. And the chairman is not here today, but amazing team of DP World is here for creating this not just beautiful space, but for creating the concept of gender equality house. So we'll speak about it a little bit later. And it is in the pavilion here in Davos. For those of you who are in Davos, also I highly recommend to come and visit DP World Pavilion. That I must give 10 out of 10 for also creating everything out of recyclable material, and everything will be recyclable after the conference. So really great round of applause, please, for that, for everybody. That really is and thank you, Federico and Maha, I can't that, to you and to your team for our partnership driven by AIM to achieve gender equality and for hosting us in this beautiful, beautiful space. I hope that people will take the tour around. Today we are here to talk about what we in Union call HeForShe, and that is importance of male allyship. A fitting conversation as the official week begins here in Davos. With over 3 million active supporters around the world, HeForShe is a global platform that calls on each and every man to take action and do their part to achieve gender equality. HeForShe also convenes a group of 11 global CEOs, including DP World, PwC, and McKinsey, who are here with us today, as leaders who are creating that change. So without further ado, you don't want me making any more mistakes and speaking, please allow me to introduce our first speaker and our gracious host, Federico, from DP World. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Aldijana. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, it's wonderful to be able to welcome you here today to this HeForShe session on the importance of male allyship. Indeed, I would also like to thank UN Women for their partnership and for working with us to host today's event. Thank you very much for that. We do look forward to facilitating this conversation on the role men play in supporting women in the workplace, but also in society. And the World Economic Forum's annual meeting is indeed the ideal platform to continue aligning our goals on gender equality. It is an opportunity to accelerate progress that has been made already, and also on the progress that we can still make to ensure that there's going to be a more equitable future for our societies and for businesses. Indeed, at DP World, women play a vital role in what is traditionally a very male-dominated industry. And whilst the pandemic and indeed also geopolitical tensions have impacted us all, the careers of women in particular have been more vulnerable. And in many ways, COVID-19 has been a gender inequality pandemic, and the human, social, and economic costs of rising inequality has been significant for women around the world. Data from America and India has proven that female job losses to COVID-19 were almost twice as high as global rates amongst men. And as we pass the halfway point to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal target of 2030, the impact of the last few years in particular has slowed progress toward a fair and gender equal world. According to the World Economic Forum's Global Gender Gap Report, Before the pandemic, we were on course to close the gender gap in a century's time. Not exactly a very short time period for any of us, but this gap has now widened to 132 years since the pandemic started. Not only is that unacceptable, but it makes absolutely no social or economic sense. From an economic standpoint, it's estimated that the global GDP growth could be up to 1 trillion lower in 2030 if we do not address this pressing issue. Taking action now to advance gender equality, on the other hand, has the potential of adding 13 trillion to global GDP in 2030. We're aware of our responsibility to ensure that an organization such as DP World in particular addresses this challenge head-on. Global businesses not only have the ability to transform the role that women play in our industry, but also to influence our peers internationally. Our journey reflects our commitment to gender equality, and indeed male allyship is absolutely crucial in promoting a more gender equal organization. Gender equality and male allyship are intricately interwoven, and it must start at the top. This is why at DP World we have strong female representation at the board level, as well as other levels of leadership within the business. This is something that our group chairman and CEO, Sultan Ahmed bin Sulaim, cares very deeply about and is very passionate about. We are committed to gender equality through our global gender equality statement, which aims to promote gender equality throughout the company. The statement provides a very clear direction for every business unit and is indeed a mandate to prioritize gender equality and have progress on a global scale. And male allyship, in truth, has to transcend corporate policies and must be woven into the fabric of our culture. And to achieve this, it has to move beyond simply verbal agreements and drive genuine behavioral change. Without it, businesses will suffer. Women must have the same opportunities available to them, and there must be space for them to realize their goals and their ambitions. If they do not have the support of male colleagues and leadership, they can and will leave organizations that cannot meet the standard. And this will have a knock-on effect and affect productivity across the world. DP World is taking action. We are a signatory of UN Women's Empowerment Principles, and we are committed to not just complying with legislation, but indeed to excelling in gender equality. Just in March of last year, our chairman was named the Middle East and North Africa region's first HeForShe Champion by UN Women. He joins other business leaders assuming the responsibility to develop real world solutions for gender equality's biggest challenges. DP World has committed to increasing female representation across DP World to at least 20% by 2025. Now, whether at top of the organization or throughout, across different functions and businesses and regions, we're absolutely committed to ensuring that this remains a priority. I do hope that the HeForShe panel inspires all of you to promote the importance of male allyship and help achieve gender equality. More importantly, we remain absolutely motivated and absolutely committed to stand with our female colleagues to inspire not just equality in the workplace, but in every walk of life. We are too far from closing the gap. And I can say from a personal perspective, as a father to 3 girls, the time to make tangible targets and to act is now. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Federico, for that. And I must say that one word really hit with me, which is when you said woven. I think that's exactly the way I see the gender equality being implemented. As you said, not just the words, but it has to be woven and integrated in everything that we do. So I congratulate the DP World, and I look forward to you achieving more and more. Our next speaker is somebody that I respect so greatly, not just because she's my boss, but because she's such a fierce advocate for gender equality and for human rights in general, that she just, we say in Bosnia, she does not have hair on her tongue. I don't know if that makes sense in English at all, but it basically means she just speaks her mind, yeah. So let me introduce you to Ms. Anita Bhatia, UN Women Deputy Executive Director and Assistant General of the United Nations. Anita, please.
Thank you very much, Aldijana, for your very kind introduction. Let me start by just echoing the thanks that you expressed at the beginning of your words to DP World, both for this fabulous space, but more importantly for your leadership and your commitment to the gender equality agenda. We need more DP Worlds in the world. And I say this because, not just because your chairman became the first HeForShe champion in the Middle East and North Africa, not just because you became the first HeForShe champion in the United Arab Emirates, but because you are really trying in a male-dominated industry to walk the talk and to make real tangible progress on a very difficult agenda of gender equality. So I want to salute you for that. And I want to salute you for thinking about the circular economy, and to just say, we are really looking forward to seeing what this is going to look like at COP28 in the UAE. So please join me in giving DP World a hand for their commitment to gender equality and to climate. I'm delighted that we're also joined by our long-standing friend at UN Women, Bob Moritz, the global chairman of PwC, another individual who is role modeling the positive masculinities that we need to see and is role modeling leadership in a major global corporate, because that is the kind of action we need today. Many of you have heard me over the last few days talking about the situation of gender equality in the world today. So I'm not going to repeat the rather depressing numbers that you are all aware of. I'm just going to say three things. And those three things are calls to action to men at Davos and to men everywhere. And it's because we fundamentally believe that the gender equality agenda is much too complex and much too big a problem to be solved by women alone. This is not something that only women need to care about. In fact, there is no way that we are going to achieve gender equality and close the 132-year gap if we don't get male allyship. That was the thinking behind HeForShe, and I'm very pleased to say we have come a long way, but I also have to say we have a very long way still to go. Why is it that it was only now that we have a HeForShe champion in the Middle East and North Africa? It's because we still don't have enough enlightened leadership, and it's because we still have not fully understood the role of male champions. So my call to men today is first and foremost, number one, please, in everything that you do, talk about the fundamental underlying root causes of gender inequality, which is power structures, and the fact that the patriarchy still rules and that power sits disproportionately in the hands of men. So we need to speak about this and not pretend it's something that we can brush under the table, under the carpet, and we can talk about other things like recruitment, promotion, training, capacity building, awareness, blah, blah, blah. None of this is going to matter if we don't talk about power and where it sits. The second thing is, my second call to action for men is please challenge negative masculinities. Do not be a bystander. What does that really look like in practice? So let me remind all of you of a picture, which I think all of you saw. I think it was sometime in the middle of last year when Ursula von der Leyen went to a meeting. I think it was in Turkey. There was no chair for her. How many of the men in that room stood up and said, Ursula von der Leyen's here. We need to give her a chair? Nobody said that. Nobody said that. Why? Why was every man in that room a bystander? So, what happens is you get into a room, you are in with others like you who hold power, and you don't have the ability to call out what's happening in the moment. We need men to call out what is happening in the moment and say, hey, wait a minute, that's Commissioner von der Leyen. She needs a chair. So I'm asking all men to challenge negative masculinities. And the third thing, the third call is for men to make more space for women. There is so much mansplaining that goes on. And I was at a lunch today, and at that lunch, which was run by this fantastic guy whom I really adore what he's doing, his agenda, he's very committed. And he said to me, I just realized that we have 5 women in the room and about 15 men. And I said, welcome to my world. I am very often in a place where I am the only woman and sometimes the only woman of color. So, I would really like men to stand up because I should not be the one asking for this. We need male allyship and we need men to stand up and say, I want to make space for a woman, and I want to make space for a woman of color, and I want to make space for a woman who is underprivileged. All of us at Davos are terribly privileged. I mean, we don't even understand the extent of our privilege because we spend a lot of time in a very rarefied atmosphere. But those of us who work at the UN and in development in general spend a lot of time thinking about that woman in Afghanistan whose dreams have been shattered by the Taliban, or that woman in Iran who lost a sister who was killed by the security police for daring to go out and express her rights. We spend a lot of time thinking about that woman who's trying to flee from traffickers because she's escaping what's happening in Ukraine. And I don't think it should only be a woman's job. So I want every man, not just in this room, but every man in Davos to think like a woman, to put yourself in her shoes, and to put yourself in the shoes of the most underprivileged women in the world. And only then will we see real, lasting change. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Anita. And of course, not just because she's my boss, but I second your call to men, all men in Davos. And there was a great campaign at one point that I think White Ribbon in Toronto organized, which was walk in her shoes. So they would make men walk in women's high heel shoes for miles and miles and miles. I mean, it was a charity run as well, but it gives you of course, I'm not encouraging walking in stilettos whatsoever, but it is the concept of changing the mindset and understanding, sitting in somebody else's place, sitting in somebody else's chair. But I'm delighted now to introduce our next speaker. Anita already mentioned his name. It's one of our HeForShe champions that has set very high standards for his company. They have recently hosted our HeForShe lab in New York after our summit. We are very grateful for that. And he's just fantastic. You will hear it yourself. So please, Mr. Bob Moritz, Global Chairman of PwC, we're so delighted and privileged to have you here with us tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and good evening, everybody. And it's a pleasure to see you all here, and to DP World, thank you very much for hosting. PwC has been associated with the HeForShe organization since 2015 as a founding member. And we sit here today, almost 8 years later, with the statistics that Federico talked about, where we actually have gone backwards. If I'm a woman in the room or a woman in the world reading that report, I should be outraged. If I'm a man in the room or a man reading that report, I should be embarrassed. The original premise for HeForShe was to ensure that we were making progress at a faster pace and leveraging the power that rests in the males' hands, minds, and hearts to actually change the curve, to make progress and provide the opportunity for equality for those from around the world, in society, local communities, and yes, even in government and corporate organizations. And I stand here today after having the role I have currently for the last 6.5 years, learning a tremendous amount. And I wanted to frame a few of those learnings and give some examples to build on where Anita went in terms of the things that can be and should be leveraged by all of us in the room. But all of us in the room are already the advocates. It's the reason you're here. The question is, how do we take our own advocacy and actually expand that and amplify on a worldwide basis? The framework we tend to use is one around action, accountability, and advocacy. There's a lot of learning within that. We have to be steadfast. We have to role model. That's not enough. Let me bring to life 3 examples for you at PwC. Why I made the decisions I did and the lessons learned and the rationale behind it. First one was fairly controversial. About 1.5 years ago, I decided not to have a global diversity officer reporting to me. The natural reaction from the 350,000 people around PwC was, what are you doing and why? This is important. We need somebody that's got that title, that responsibility that directly reports to you. My rationale was this is not an issue that should rest in my hands or that singular inclusivity person, but rather with the business. We set up a diversity council on purpose. That diversity council has 12 or so people in it, mostly males that are mostly business unit leaders. They have 3 roles. Come together to formulate the policies of PwC as we think about inclusion and equity. Second, they better role model. It's the reason they got handpicked for the role. And third, they now have the job to talk to their fellow business leaders and respectfully, intrusively, proactively challenge them of why aren't they doing more, because this is a business issue, and to turn it into a business-to-business conversation. The impact that it has had has been tremendous in terms of the candid conversations that are necessary to say, what am I doing? What are you doing? What is not being done? And what can you do differently going forward? And yes, even a little competitive pressure, business unit to business unit, from business unit leaders to actually drive the change. The second point that we have focused on is the world is very much focused on skills and competencies. We are now at the point of saying the formal education systems don't do enough. We have to actually credential people more so as we think about the upskilling and the reskilling that has to be done. PwC, like many other organizations, has invested a tremendous amount of time in terms of assessing people on skills like digital or environmental or climate, as well as the softer stuff. We decided to actually have a diversity and inclusion certification course. The journey we are on right now is we have developed that course. We ask people to go through 30 hours of training, of which it's not solo. It's got to be with other people so you understand what it's like to be in somebody else's shoes. It changes behavior. And once you are done, you are now certified. Where we will eventually go, leaders can't be leaders. You can't be in management unless you're certified. It's too important a skill set to have if you're going to run a business, because it's important to the business itself and it's important to society overall. The third thing I want to focus people on is the data is evident at the macro level, but the data is evident and available to be used at the micro level. There's enough data right now to say where are there problems in countries, in business units, and with individuals. And you can call it out with the AI that'll point to the directions where those issues are in a government organization, a corporate organization, or even in a country, more broadly. The better thing we can do is now start to use the assets in front of us, i.e. the data, to go pinpoint where the intrusive but respectful conversations need to be had to change the behavior of the individuals to get to the advocacy and the ally that he for she was all about. And the only way that happens is by the males doing it. Now, as I said, it's great that some of us role model, myself included in that. The steadfast learning, I try to role model as much as possible when to call things out, but I don't do it regularly enough. And I would hold myself accountable to say, why am I still doing it? Because at this point in time, the entire organization should be doing it. Just a few weeks ago, when we talked about a session we had this morning here in Davos around climate and technology coming together, we went back to an original principle we talked about a few years ago. There should be no panel hosted by PwC without a woman on that panel. Oh, by the way, if you're invited to a panel, why aren't we having a conversation with the host of that panel in terms of why they don't have women on that panel as well? These are the kind of individual behaviors that have to be done in terms of the role modeling, but our job is not to just do it ourselves. Our job is to actually get others to do it so we amplify and scale up the actions that we're looking for. I leave you today with those lessons, those learnings, and ask that when we come back next year, that we have stopped the deterioration of the curve, and when we come back a few more years from now, that we've at least cut the curve in a much faster and aggressive way. But the people in this audience are not the ones we should be talking to. You're here because you believe in this already. Our job is to actually go out and get a number of other people to be equally inspired and empowered, head, mind, as well as intellect, and do what's needed individually and collectively to make the progress we're looking for. That's what this organization is all about. That's what we're also supposed to be focused on. And I look forward to the panel conversations in terms of more learnings, which is one of the benefits of being one of the founding members here at HeForShe. Thank you very much, everybody.
So now you know why I said he's one of the most inspiring HeForShes that we've ever had, founding member, PwC. But Ms. Moritz, the one thing is that I love the word you use, we need to be intrusive. And I think that that is the point that we are at, actually. We talked, we were kind, we did so much advocacy, we called, we explained, we have so much data. You know, I'm all for data. But when somebody tells me, oh, we need to run another survey to understand how, I'm like, I had it, okay? I'm done. Because what I know is that it will take us 300 years to get to the point where I want to be today here in Davos, and every woman that is here. So your word intrusive is going to become, you just coined it. I didn't talk to you before that. Respectful intrusive. Yes, I love that. Respectful intrusive. So I think we're going to go and rephrase the HeForShe advocacy that we're becoming respectfully intrusive in terms of the challenging the men that are not in the room. And I think that's exactly our point, which builds on what Anita said about calling all men in Davos, not just those that are here in the room. But I must actually say something. I am not many times in the room that I see so many men in the room when we are talking about. I'm now like, I have these lights coming into my eyes, but I see like probably 50-50 actually, which is unusual, which really is unusual. Speaks to the growth, yeah? Speaks to the change, speaks to the curve. So thank you so much again, and we look forward to taking that phrase forward. We're moving to the next segment of our event, and now, today I'm just delighted all day. So there's so many amazing people that I'm very privileged to introduce here. But this is somebody that I have met 15 years ago, maybe, yes, about 15 years ago. And at the time I was managing Secretary General's campaign, United to End Violence Against Women, and the person that I'm going to invite on the floor to be our moderator for the next segment was an amazing, amazing woman. She still is an amazing woman, with over 30 years of experience. She was a guest at and our key guest at the breakfast with our Secretary General, talking about violence against women in business. So she has over 30 years of experience in public affairs, communications, business, consulting for major multinationals. She has led APCO, many of you know APCO, to become one of the largest privately owned communications in public affairs firms in the world. If I'm correct, if I remember, it started in your kitchen. Was it in your kitchen? Somewhere, some living room or somewhere like that, all of that. So Margery Kraus, please, Executive Chair and founder of APCO Worldwide, please join us. She will be moderator for the next panel. And I'm also delighted to welcome our speakers for the fireside chat with Margery. And that is another amazing woman that I'm going to introduce today, who is kind of quote-unquote, guilty for all of our work in DP World, with particularly on violence, on gender equality. I'm now all mixing my things. Ms. Maha Al-Qattan, please join us here from DP World. She's the Chief People and Sustainability Officer for DP World. And I'm going to invite another amazing person, Mr. Ozgur, Tanrikulu. Yes, I know. Yeah, I can see. I don't see from the lights, but I see you there. Who is the board chair of People Committee from McKinsey company, another amazing HeForShe company, and they're going to tell you all about their work in terms of gender equality, bringing men on board. Margery, over to you.
Okay, well, thank you so much. And I hope that we can use this time and get right into specifics, because I think we've been given the environment for this. And HeForShe is something that I totally believe in. And I want to say APCO has always been a proud supporter of you and women, but also we're also generation equity commitment makers. And a lot of that is we're a majority women-owned firm. And we believe that to walk the talk, you have to kind of play it forward. And so I'm delighted to be here. And DP World, thank you so much for your commitment to this. I will echo what has been said before about being in the room. I don't know how many times we've had this conversation, and everybody in the room, they're all women, and nothing happens. And as soon as we started to put men in the room and make sure that this was something important to everybody, we started to see a lot more change. And so delighted that we have this chance. So you've all been introduced. I'm not going to go through that, but I thought maybe we could get specific about what your firms are doing as role models for other people, and that we could use this not only for the people in the room, but the people watching, to understand what some of the challenges and opportunities are to help us move the agenda forward. And I want to start, Maha, with you, because we've been talking about DP World and about the importance that your chairman has seen in supporting HeForShe. And so what do you think, where do you think DP World is on the journey of, we heard Federico talk about some of the goals that are out there and what's happening. But I just wondered, in your view, male allyship is going to be necessary to get there. Where do you think you are in the journey?
I think it's working. I was trying to turn on the mic and I couldn't see any light. But first, I'd like to thank you and women for creating this platform and giving us all an opportunity to share our experiences with the broader group. I'd like to start by saying that empowering women at DP World does not mean giving them some special treatment or some special training. Women don't have any special need. They're equally talented. They're equally capable. A talent is a talent. We at DP World focus more on removing the biases, leveling the playing field, and creating an inclusive environment where everyone, regardless of their gender or race, is appreciated for their contribution rather than anything else. So by focusing on removing biases, you really create that inclusive environment where everyone can flourish. And we do recognize as a male-dominated company that the biases do exist. We do recognize that there is a huge gap. That's why what we do is we focus our efforts at DP World in developing programs to fill these gaps as soon as possible. And there are many programs that we've developed that I will share later on in my other parts. I wanted to also mention UN Women. We have also signed up for UN Women Empowerment Principles in 2015, and we have done a work internally to align our own internal women principles with the 7 Women Empowerment Principles, and we were the first to sign in the UAE, and I'm very proud of that. And finally, our work with gender equality is not limited to DP World operations and internally. Women is one of the 3 major legacy pillars within DP World Sustainability Strategy, and we do extend our work outside of the company within the broader communities where we operate. There are many, many examples, but there's one that's really close to my heart. It's our partnership with Barefoot College in Senegal, What we did is we
know
created the Solar Mamas program. What we do with Solar Mamas program is we get females from the rural communities and train them as solar technicians. It gives them really good skill to create solar energy, go back to their communities, create solar energy, and make it as a business and bring in income for their families. And this also helps with just transition that we're all looking forward to.
It's one of my favorite programs actually in the world, because I think the other thing it does is it gives women presence in the community, respect, because they're engineers.
Yes.
And some of them don't have reading or writing, but they know how to transform their community.
And it's also
So-
green energy.
Yes. So it has dual purpose, which is great. I just want to say one thing before moving on, and that is from my experience in the Middle East, I think there's a misperception sometimes about the whole gender equity and equality situation. And I think that sometimes there's a lot of self-righteousness in other parts of the world. And my experience is that women in the Middle East have made fantastic progress and are leading the way in a lot of the transformation that's happening. And so I just feel, I'm proud to be here with you. And I think DP World can be a real role model and leader in demonstrating this.
Can I just share one example on that? Because I'm a very proud UAE citizen. In the UAE, we have achieved 50% female representation in the parliament, making us one of the few countries and the first countries in the world to achieve that. So yes, I think we are progressing much quicker than the Western world within the region, which is
It needs to be said, both to recognize how much progress has been made, and also to give a little kick in the pants to the rest of the world. So I'm really glad to hear you say that. So, Ozgur, I just wanted to, I know you just put out a report about women in the workplace and research McKinsey's done, and only 1 in 4 C-suite leaders is a woman. But yet McKinsey is pretty good about the parity, 50-50. So what is the gap? What have you done that allows you to be that much farther ahead than this report shows? And what have you learned from that could help other people move on this journey?
Margery, thank you. It's such a pleasure and frankly privilege to be part of this conversation, and especially of a topic that is so dear to my heart. I chair the People Committee of McKinsey, and frankly, when it comes to the things that I feel most passionate about is exactly this. So, and at the same time, it does really pain me, because you step back and you look at all the research that we and others have done. Whether it's the women workplace, we have a number of Women Matters reports all around the world. I think there's been wonderful UN reports and many others as well. And it is sad because, in a sense, the science keeps on proving itself again and again and again, right? There is no question, there's not even a remote question, that equal teams, equal leadership just perform better all the time. All the time, right? There is no question. This has been proven by Harvard research. This has been proven by all the research we have done. So it is almost like it's given. It is known. I mean, the facts are just there. The science is there. Yet, you look at the outcome, and here's what you see. Women and the world is moving forward. So you look at the education systems. There are more women graduating in many countries, actually most countries now, from colleges than men. So it's not that women are staying behind, they're actually pushing forward. So they're coming with the degrees, they're coming with the education capability, yet somehow the workplace isn't moving fast enough. It is moving, but it's moving at a snail pace. It is moving just at a snail pace, and it is painful. And even us as McKinsey have done so much of the thinking, we are still nowhere, we still have so much to do, right, in all the senses. And I think we step back and we look, and that's why it's so painful. I've also come to a conclusion, and that is, it's not about talk or good intentions or wishful thinking. It's got to be about, if you run business, it's got to be about numbers. It's got to be about numbers. And numbers all the way through, from the way we basically recruit women, we retain them, we promote them, and unless we are extremely rigorous in tracking, first of all, the success rates, there's no way I think that things are going to move. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot of all the ifs and buts and whatsoever. So I think that's the first thing that we're doing. We're rigorously tracking all around the world in all our practices and effectively asking constantly the question when we see a gap that is there, we're saying why? Why is it that we cannot retain? And we're doing pretty good in recruiting increasingly, but retention, we're not where we'd like to be, and we're constantly at which level and at which point in their careers are we losing women? What is it that we're not doing? And one of the things that we've come to is exactly the topic of this conversation, which comes down to what I would call sponsorship. Sponsorship. Now, that's an important word because at the end, I'm a believer that if we want more women participation in the workforce, if we want more women leadership, which again, scientifically proven to improve the performance everywhere, we're going to have to make sure that we actually are giving the opportunities to women. Now, that opportunities are going to have to be given by men and women of leaders. Reality is there are many more men leaders than women. So in a way, men have to step up because it's not that women leaders have to support women leaders and upcoming men just have to watch and see this happening. So we're now basically, starting to, as part of the quantification, run basically a global sponsorship and mentorship measurement system, where we basically ask everyone, men and women, to say, who are your sponsors? How many sponsors do you have? And literally list them down by person, and then go back to the leaders and say, why is it that you say you're a fantastic women, ally, and you don't seem to sponsor a single up-and-coming woman? How is that possible? And I'm not talking about mentorship. Mentorship is good. Giving advice is one thing. The other one is, I will be with you and I'll support you along the way. So in a way, I believe I think there was a good discussion around, interventions and, I think positive intrusion. And so I think that is the type of thing. We're going to have to be a lot more, basically numbers driven and frankly, be able to interject at the right time the changes that needs to come.
So let me ask you a question. One of the things, talking about numbers and accountabilities, do you and McKinsey put anything into the reviews in terms of salary reviews and everything? Because what I've seen is that, that speaks to intent. That if you're going to be judged on the basis of how diverse your staff is and how many people you've sponsored, it makes a difference. So I don't know if you want to speak to that.
And that's exactly the numbers point. So in the recent years, we've started to now change our evaluation systems as well. So what I just told you is not just for people to give input. That actually is then seen by the evaluators of the folks, and effectively gets into the review discussions around what people are doing or what they're not doing. Because only then, frankly, at the end of the day, we figured out that we're going to be able to get to the heart. I think many people have good intentions, and some of them do it. We just want everyone to do it. And that's the only way we're going to start moving people.
So, I just wanted to comment on one other thing, and then we can move on. And that is the experience also of understanding that it's not just about numbers. It's also about how what I've seen is women leave the workforce, not because because they're uncomfortable, because you get to a certain level and you look around and there aren't a lot of people like you, and that you don't feel, inclusive. I think we have to be really careful in this discussion that we're not just talking about diversity, that we're talking about diversity and inclusion together, because that's where I think HeForShe and the tone at the top really makes a big difference. And that's why, having chairmen stand up and really put their name on the line, I think sends an important signal that people are going to be judged not just by how many people they've brought in, but how well they can keep them, train them, and advance them. So, I think that's important. Anyway, so we're here at Davos, and this is somewhere around my 20th year here. And when I first came, there were probably about 2% women. And it was not a very comfortable situation. And, you didn't always feel included, but, some of us felt empowered to speak up, I guess you'd say. And today it's very different. But at the same time, it's like everything else, it's a journey. And I think the forum's done a lot to bring this along. But I think that what I've noticed this year is that there is a lot more a discussion about male allyship. And, thanks to UN Women for bringing that to every attention. So what do you think, and this is Maha, maybe to you, and then if Ozgur has anything else, what's the further step that we can make in male allyship, and how can we help support this more equal representation at meetings like this and at platforms so that women feel their voices being heard? So I don't know if you have some thoughts about that.
So let's take a step back at and look at the last few years. We've noticed that female attrition rate has gone high, and it's a study by McKinsey, but also I have, as a HR professional, experienced it firsthand. And I think now more than ever, male allyship is important for us to be able to achieve SDG 5 goal of gender equality by 2030. I'm very proud and honored that our chairman, Mr. Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem, was badged the first HeForShe Champion for the MENA region, which really shows DP World's commitment towards gender equality. And I fully agree with you that for us to reach to a stage where we want to, inclusion is important. And that's why DP World has hired its first inclusion manager. It's really important for us not to only bring in women, but to prepare the right environment and the right culture for them to be recognized for their work, to be equally treated, to prosper. So inclusion is definitely on the top of the list. I would also like to mention that as a global player in a male-dominated industry, we do recognize the challenge is big, and that's why we do continuously assess ourselves against, be it the women empowerment principles and other frameworks, to find the gaps wherever there are, and to develop programs to accelerate filling those gaps. For example, one of the gaps that came up in the last few years was female representation within DP World subsidiary boards. It was really low to minimal. What we did last year in 2022 March, we developed Women on Board program, and we selected 13 high potential female leaders from the company, put them in the program, gave them the right skills to be effective board members. After graduating the program, we were able to successfully place all 13 female leaders on boards across DP World subsidiary companies.
I think that deserves a round of applause. It's really great.
No, I want to add to that, and I think what Maha says is exceptionally important. I think the examples she gave are actually spot on. So in this sense, I personally find one of the biggest challenges, and now this is speaking from the thinking about the man, is that in a way a lot of the male leaders, they don't know what they don't know. And what I mean with that is they think, of course this is important and it should be sort of happening, right? So, and if it doesn't happen, it's, well, there's got to be some reasons for it, but that reason is not me, right? So in a way, it's natural, it happens, we're trying our best. So there's a lot of sort of, frank ignorance out there, right? So ignorance around what they don't know, and frank ignorance around the fact that some of the things that we've done, we do all the research, but people don't know that seriously. If you have an equal leadership team, or if you have stronger representation of women on boards, this isn't just for the sake of diversity. I mean, yes, it's great for diversity, it's great for inclusion, but no, it's actually better for business. You get much better outcomes. You just get better performance, you get better health. You get a lot more balanced view, and you get a lot better challenge in the boards, right? So this is just facts. So in a way, therefore, forcing that debate or making, like Maha said, or DP World, those changes is exactly the type of interventions required. And I believe in these cases, the senior most parts of the organization plays the most important role here, because there is a natural speed to any organization, but when the board or the CEO steps in and makes it their own mandate, I think that when we start change happens.
No, absolutely. So moving on to kind of the challenge of the new generation coming into the workforce. I know you have this all-in initiative. And maybe you could speak to what you think the extra challenges will be with new workers coming in and how we do this. And, you know, I'm especially struck as somebody running a global business at what the pandemic has done in terms of people's understanding of the workplace even, because we have a lot of young people coming into the workplace who've never been in an office. And, you know, so there are a lot of challenges there. And, you know, we've seen backsliding because of the pandemic, and, you know, we have to work extra hard to make sure that doesn't happen going forward. So what can we all learn from this experience, and what are you doing in particular with these younger workers coming in?
I'm going to be a bit controversial here. I got to say, I love the new generation. Let's just start with that. I know there's a lot of talk or whatever to say that I disagree. I actually think the new generation is fantastic. And I actually think a lot of things that we are talking about is so natural to them, because I think that generation largely, increasingly, is coming from a lot more diverse backgrounds. They're a lot more understanding of inclusion. That's the way they're trained. And as I said, the education and everything is changing. It is different when you're sitting in the classroom, 50% are women, right? You have a different perspective versus the older generations where that wasn't necessarily the case. So I actually think the new generation is coming with exactly the right intent. And they have a higher level of expectation on diversity, on inclusion, than, frankly, a lot of the senior leaders in many places. Right? So what we see is that we get challenged a lot in a beautiful way by the new generation, actually on where we think we've gone one step. They're like, why didn't you go 3 steps? Right? You know, you took 1 step, why not 3? And they're pushing the thinking. To me, it's actually about unlocking that a lot more than actually being worried about it, because I think that is what the future is going to be. And they're coming from a much better place, I believe.
Did you want to add anything?
I agree with you. I also love the new generation.
No, and I do. I know from my own experience, they ask some very good questions, and they really try to keep people accountable. And I think that will be the push that gets us over. We have one last question, because I know we're running out of time, and I thank you for a very interesting and lively discussion, and for challenging the audience to take this one step forward. And I think they've learned from your own experiences. But how can we maintain the momentum? How do we create more momentum for the future? And what do you hope that male allies will, or the potential allies will take from this conversation?
I will take this quickly. I think now, more than ever, is the best time for addressing gender equality because of the dynamics of the world, automation, change, the technological transformation. Most of the traditionally male-dominated industries, like logistics, are moving from being a manpower industry to a brain power industry, and it's opening new doors for all women. So I would say right now is the best time for any woman to enter the logistics industry, because there are many opportunities given the technological transformation and automation and many other reasons. Secondly, I think post-pandemic, the introduction, I would say the enhanced introduction of flexibility and work from home also gives tremendous opportunity for women who left the workforce in the past to come back and make use of it. And finally, I think platforms like UN Women and HeForShe are raising awareness and raising the bar. I see many more companies talk about gender equality. I see many more pledges. I see many more commitments. And I think you should continue the great work, and we will be there to support and do our bit. Thank you.
I fully agree. I think this is exceptionally important also in terms of work. And I do think at the end of the day, you know, what we talked about, both quantifying, measuring, and assessing, and frankly giving it into the performance systems and so on, is an important step. The other important step is to have great examples, right? Because that's when people move. Part of it is the stories, right? You hear one story of a company, and then everybody gets inspired with it, and that story then starts permeating around. And therefore, I'd love to hear more inspiring stories, but not stories for the sake of this is good, but also this is how did that good lead to something great in that institution, right? And I think when these stories come out more and more, people will understand that this is actually good for humanity and also good for business, right? This is one of those few things that you actually can move both at the same time.
Well, I want to thank PwC and McKinsey and DP World for being such good leaders and advocates in this very, very important discussion. And then UN Women, I can't say enough about how important this HeForShe initiative is. And I think for those people who are watching, I hope that you've been inspired by what can be done and that you take it from here. And let's all make a pledge today that tomorrow's going to be better, and we're all going to work hard to make sure that there are many more allyships developed, and we'll have a better world as a result. So thank you very much. Do I turn it back?
Thank you so much to our panelists and to our moderator, Margery, Maha, and now I can't pronounce the name, Ozgur. Thank you so much. This brings us to the end of the program, but I still do have one more phrase that I'm going to use for changing HeForShe's strategy, which is what you just said, Maha, which is, I love it, I really love it. It's manpower to brain power. And I think that's really summarized it in terms of bringing us all together, men and women, and using our brains and using our brain power to make the world a better place. Thank you again so much. Thank you, DP World again. Thank you, McKinsey. Thank you, PwC. Amazing partners, amazing people. I hope to not see you next year, but to see a room full of new men in this same space. Thank you so much. And those of you who are watching, thank you and good night.